Hey guys, this is Nicole Van Tassel with I Explore Science, and as you guys are heading back to school very shortly, I'm actually not going back until the end of the month because we start pretty late here, but I figured I would share with you my beginning of the year, my first week plans. And I mean, honestly, it's nothing groundbreaking, so maybe you're turning this off right now, but I thought it might be nice to hear what other teachers are doing in their classroom and yeah, what I'm doing. So one thing that when I was mapping out my first week plans, my goals for sure are to just build those relationships. I want to start building in that value of curiosity and trying and persistence. But that said, that grit or persistence and struggling and the struggling through to reach your aha moment, persisting through failure, all of that is for sure a value of my classroom, and it's something I want my students to start thinking about. I want us to start talking about right away. But really, that can only happen when we have, really set up a safe space for students. So the first week of school for me is really focused on building those relationships, setting the tone for our class culture, and diving a little bit into science skills and our science content toward the end. But I also am not rushing anything. One of the worst things I've realized for myself, one of the worst things I can do is try to rush through things, whether it is rushing my kids out the door or rushing to finish a project or something like that. I get so frustrated when I'm rushing. It's like a huge source of stress. So when I was planning out my week, my goal was not to load a ton of things and try to get through so many things in every single class, because my students are going to take so much longer to do everything. I know that from the get-go. And I don't want to get into that feeling like we need to hurry up and feeling like we need to get through this, when maybe in reality we need to take that time and get to know each other and work through those, review those expectations and all that. Anyway, so here's what I'm planning. So for my first day of school, I am going to have my students have something to do as soon as they walk into class. So I'm going to have a student survey at their desk. It's nothing crazy complicated. My thoughts are I haven't actually made it yet. Again, I don't start till the end of the month. So I've mapped it out, but I haven't put together things yet. But I'm thinking I'm also going to have some sort of coloring kind of component to it for students who might finish early, and if they want to do that. But a student survey that asks some basic information about my students and also gives them a chance to tell me anything that might be important to them or that they think I should know. I want to keep it as open-ended as possible, but I also want to get some of those basics that I really do need to know, who do you live with? And honestly, I was talking with Erin Sadler about this and what she asked in her student surveys, and I love some of the questions that she came up with. It was very open-ended, who do you live with? Because some of our students might be living with grandparents or cousins or who lives in your house or something like that was the question. And it doesn't assume that students are with certain parents or anything like that. It's just who do you live with? And you can tell me who you live with, or who lives in your house. Anyway, so some of those basic questions, but also open-ended options. I want students to be able to share their interests with me, and I want students to also, if there's anything that important they think I should know. And I also want to emphasize, I'm having them do the survey, but I want to actually use this survey. One of the biggest mistakes, I made when I first started, and I see teachers making a lot, is they think oh, I've done a survey, I've gotten to know my students, but then they never actually remember any of the things the students said, or they never come back to those surveys to figure out well, what is going on with the student. Or it's really important that yes, we're doing these surveys with our students, but we're also using that information to find commonalities, to build trust, to do all of those things. So anyway, it's important for me my students to know as soon as they walk in the door, they have something to do. So that's our bell ringer for the day. And I also want to get to know my students, so I'm doing a short survey. I'm estimating 10-ish minutes for this. So I have weird classes. It's a weird rotating 4-day schedule. I see students 3 of the 4 days, and 2 of the days they have long 70-minute classes, and 1 of the days they have 45-minute classes. So I'm kind of thinking in this chunk of 45 minutes, and then this extra chunk of 30-minute, 25-minute, extension classes 2 of the 3 days that I see them. So my first chunk is like the 45 minutes. So that's about maybe 10 minutes. Again, 10 minutes might be way too long, but we can just move forward if we finish early. And the activities that I've planned for at the end, we can kind of stretch out as long as we need them to be. But I also don't want to rush my students. Then we're going to move into that process of like reviewing our syllabus, setting those expectations, and talking about some of the most important procedures. I am going to do this like a circle time, to be honest. I think that for me, I want to set the tone right away that we are all like participants in the classroom and everybody is valued. And like, yeah, I'm the teacher, but I also don't want to become this like sage on the stage kind of person that's like sitting at the top, at the front of the room and talking at students. So I'm planning to set up my desk. I actually have tables, so I'm gonna have to like have students sit in certain ways, or move to a different area of the room if I have space to do flexible seating. I still like haven't been able to get into my room to set up, so I'm not there yet. But I'm going to do this more like a circle time. So like I said, I haven't mapped out fully everything, but we're going to definitely be going over the syllabus. And in order to that, we are not just reading through the syllabus. I'm going to set up a simple little scavenger hunt where they are finding key pieces of information. And then it might be like a riddle or something like that, where if you pick out the letters and spell something. We're also going to talk about expectations in this circle time period. And I've gone back and forth. Like, I see the value in engaging students in discussions about like what are our expectations, but I actually also think that there's value in just saying like, these are the expectations I have for this class. And like, we're all going to be respectful of each other. We are all going to participate. Like, I want my students to have a voice in how our classroom runs, but there's also some things that are just not their choice. Like, those are my expectations. So those are like big value type of expectations. So those are like the ones that I'm going to be talking about. And then my goal is also to, as we move forward, bring in more opportunities for student choice and student voice in how things are run. Like, I don't know, I don't have an example, but bring in that student choice and voice after we have kind of established like, this is how things are happening. Like, this is the expectations I have for our general behavior and how we treat each other and things like that. I think that honestly, as a parent, sometimes I err on the side of like, I want to give my kids so much choice that sometimes I don't always have like the best boundaries, and I don't want to make that mistake in my classroom. I was reminded recently that like, it's my job to set those boundaries. And so I am setting the boundaries of these are the expectations, and then I'm going to give them choice within those boundaries. So I wanted to kind of just share that like realization with you, because if you're thinking, you hear me talk a lot about student voice and choice and autonomy and independence and all of that, but at the same time, our students are working toward those things. And the goal is that we are helping them do that. And sometimes the best thing we can do to do that is to like set the firm boundaries and then give them the scribble room in the middle of that paper, like set the paper, this is our boundary, and then let them go to town in the middle. So the expectations are not like negotiable for me. And then procedures. So this is maybe where there may at some point be opportunities for students to adjust procedures. For the beginning of the year, I am not gonna like go through my whole, like, this is how we sharpen our pencils, this is how we go to the bathroom, this is how we do group work, this is how we move from desk to desk, this is what we do. Like, I'm gonna focus on those key things. Like, this is how we come into the room, this is how we exit the room, this is how you get my attention if I'm speaking or if I'm doing something. And then probably like, this is how I get to go to the bathroom. Like, those are some key procedures that students may need within that first class. So I'm going to focus on those ones. I probably won't even focus a ton on the exit class one until the end of class, because again, it's relevant when it's most relevant. So I'd probably focus on the coming into class, and I would refer them back to what they did when they came in to that day. Talk about how to, getting my attention and going to the bathroom. And then, tying in any like, how do you get my attention? If my rule is that you do not just run out of your seat, then remind this is the rule. We're not just running out of our seat, but here's how we like raise our hand or whatever. So we're gonna do a circle time kind of thing with that. I'm estimating maybe 30-ish minutes for that. And then I'm gonna wrap up that 45-minute chunk with a game. And I was just gonna probably have like a beach ball with a bunch of questions on it, and then do some fun like answer the question. I also really like the game Scattergories, and I haven't played it for a really long time, but I always thought that'd be a really fun classroom game to play. So I'm planning on doing something Scattergories related, where you like give somebody a category, and all the kids in the class have to write down like a thing that comes into that category, and then whoever has the idea that nobody else has, then you win a point or whatever. I don't know. I always think that's fun, so I want to incorporate that game somehow, even though I don't really have a plan for that yet. Okay, so that is like the core 45 minutes. Then I'm gonna do, in my extension time, I'm gonna move into an actual science type of activity, and we're going to do Notice and Wonder nature journals. So my goal with Notice and Wonder is to start instilling that like pausing, noticing, taking those observations, and starting to wonder about things, that curiosity, that asking questions. I probably don't have time to get the whole class outside and back inside in 25 minutes. So I'm planning on bringing in some nature objects and then having them make observations and do the nature journals for that. The resource that I mentioned in a previous, I've been mentioning a lot lately, how to teach nature journaling, or something like that, by John Muir Laws and Emily Lyons, I think, is a great resource for that. And I'm planning on using one of their first lessons is just like Notice and Wonder. And it's pretty much just basically Notice and Wonder that we all like have heard about and talked about. But it's incorporating it into like an actual journaling component instead of just like talking about observations. So we're going to do that activity to wrap up our first day. So that's my first day. It's mostly focused on just setting like the expectations for the class, covering some of those very important like procedures that they're going to need like from the get-go, and taking some time to get to know my students through the student survey. And I am probably going to like take that and then like I'm going to use that information in some way, whether I write back to the student on the survey and pass it back, or like writing notes back to students later or something along those lines. I always like to do this like passing notes back and forth thing. So doing that, and then having a little bit of just like that relationship building time with like question ball or Scattergories or something like that. So that is what I have at this point for day one. Okay, so day two. Like I said, I really like passing notes. I use this strategy. When I was teaching it was my first year in a public school. I had taught in a private school for a year, and I moved into a public school. And I was with a very difficult group of students, and my classroom management was not very good, and I was also taking the lead from a teacher whose classroom management was not very good. So basically, the first 2 months of the school year were just like hell. It was hell for me. It was miserable for my students. Like, it was awful. So I had to do a lot of repair with my students at that point. And one of the tools that I found probably the most helpful was passing notes to my students. And I took that experience, and I've done it every single beginning of the year I've had since then. And it is just such a nice way to build a relationship with a student in a pretty quick, like in a not super time consuming way. And just to make to have a connection point with each individual student. So I just call it passing notes. So my bell ringer for day two is literally going to just be a simple prompt. I don't know what it is yet, because like I said, I don't go back for a month, but it's going to be some sort of prompt that asks them to share something that they like would want to talk about. So maybe it's their like favorite XYZ, like they can choose, tell me why you like about it, or like maybe it's a favorite activity, or maybe it's like an experience they have had, something they did over the summer or last school year or wherever, or like whatever. My goal is probably to give like a couple options, maybe 2 or 3 options to choose from, and I'm going to have them write a note to me I'll just give them a little piece of paper, and then my homework for the day is going to be going through and reading those notes and writing a note back to the students. I return them the next day, and I really try to ask a question or like a follow-up to anything that they've written. And then I ask them to like, if they would like to, they can pass it back to me by putting it in like the exit slip box on the way out. And obviously not every student passes a note back. However, every student did have that one personal touch point with me within the first 2 days of school. And the ones that do pass it back, I like read what they say, and I will try to give them something to respond to back. So I will continue doing this until it whittles down. And eventually, like, people stop writing back. But the first week of school, it's like such a good relationship builder, I found, and it's surprising the students that actually do write back. Like, sometimes you would be surprised the ones that do. So anyway, that's going to be the bell ringer, 5 minutes. Then we're going to review some group work expectations. So again, coming back to some of those expectations we had set before. And then I'm going to have my students participate in a group work activity. So I'm going to set like the big kind of framework, and then, you know, like, we are going to be respectful to each other, and we are going to, stay in our seats and stay at our stations with our groups. We are going to talk to people only within our, like, whatever the rules and expectations are for group work. But then we're going to dig into what group work looks like. And the way I'm going to do that is by providing my students little problem scenarios or like images. So my kids, we got these during COVID. We were doing like kind of homeschooling kind of stuff. They were preschool and kindergarten, so it wasn't crazy. But we were doing some of that stuff because they weren't in preschool and our preschool was closed. So I got these cards that were called I Heard Your Feelings. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I'm looking over there. I Heard Your Feelings. And it's just a cartoon. And there's no words on it because, again, these are for like preschool and kindergartners. But it's very obvious, like something happened in that, on that card. Like, there might be they're little animals. Like, the little bear is crying, and there's a spilled cup of milk and a broken plate on the floor, and the big bear is like walking into the room. And then there's questions on the back that say like, what do you think happened? How is the bear feeling? What could you say to the bear? Or like whatever. It's like emotional intelligence kind of stuff. So I want to do that with group work. So I want to provide scenarios to my students, whether these are written out text scenarios or like if I can find drawings or comics or maybe even little videos or something. My goal is to have a variety of them. And then to kind of have them discuss at their groups, like, how did each individual feel in this group, like in this situation, in this scenario? What maybe was a not great choice in terms of what happened? Like, what could have been done differently? I want them to start thinking about how, like, from different perspectives. I want them to think about, like, if I'm this person, should I have acted that way? Or should I have said that? Or should I have done something differently? And if I'm this person, like, how did I feel when that person said that to me? And I want to use these problem scenarios to then come back and really flesh out our classroom norms. So while, the first day we're going to talk about our general expectations, like, you're not screaming at me, we're being respectful, we're staying in our seats, like all of those things. The second day, I want to dig into, like, what does that actually really look like? And so I want students to start thinking about, like, what do these norms look like in our classroom? It means that we are taking time to, when one person is talking, we are really listening to what they're saying. And we're not just thinking about, like, what we're going to say in return. We are going to really, like, actively listen, hear what they're saying. We are going to respond to statements with curiosity instead of, like, becoming defensive and jumping down someone's throat. And again, these are all, like, goals, right? Things happen. Adults do this all the time. Like, these are things that we all work on. But I want my students to just begin to see what these norms and what these expectations and what these values actually look like in practice. So we're going to do this, like, problem scenarios type of activity. I'm thinking that's going to take about, like, 30 minutes if we give them, like, maybe 4 scenarios, a couple minutes with each of them, and then come back together as a class. And that'll be probably another 10 minutes or so. So that's my 45 minutes for my second class. And then we are going to do a second nature journaling activity with that, like, extension block, 25 minutes. This one is called, it's from that same book. It's called To Each Its Own. And basically there's going to be an object at each table. They are going to do their nature journal of that object, and then they're going to pair up with somebody from a different table, and they are going to have to identify which object that person did their observations about and their nature journal about. So there might be, like, 4 acorns at the table, and they're going to have to figure out which one was their acorn. Or like there will be 5 flowers at the table, and they have to figure out which 5 flowers or leaves or whatever. I think leaves might work best, but I might try to find like acorn. Like I want something that's going to be obviously different, but also close enough that you do have to make good observations. So it's a little game. So that's the kind of science skills activity. Again, like nature journaling isn't part of my curriculum, but there are so many ways we can use nature journaling. And like the first thing I want to really focus on is just this pausing and learning how to make observations, learning how to see, learning how to communicate those observations, and then also learning to take those observations and just wonder, ask questions, get curious. So I'll probably add to that, to each its own activity, a like wondering thing, like generating some questions about those observations and about the objects that were at the table. Okay, so that's day 2. And again, we are still focused really on setting our classroom culture, establishing these norms, getting to know each other, and seeing how, and like even, you know, like I don't really have I guess I have the passing notes is a way for me to get to know my students. I am not having I guess, let me caveat this. My students are this is a small school that I'm moving into. They have been together since kindergarten. So my students pretty much all know each other already. And actually they do, because because we are adding a middle school at my school, there are no new incoming, like they're not taking 7th graders from outside of the school. They all had to be in 6th grade at the school, moving into 7th. So I am not spending a ton of time with them, like getting to know each other, I guess. And that might be something that you should consider with your classroom. I'm really focusing on me getting to know my students, and then also building how they're going to work together in my classroom. So that is maybe a way of getting to know each other, or a way of getting to navigate how they are working together. But in terms of like getting to know like whose favorite thing is this or whose favorite thing is that, like they probably already know that because they've been together for many years already. So that's day 2. Okay, so day 3, and this is the 45-minute class, and this is the last day I will see them in the rotation of 4 days, and our week is only 4 days, so I will only see them 3 days. So day 3, my bell ringer is going to be a science learning survey. So I'm going to set it up like a quiz, and I haven't, again, ironed out all the details, but everybody likes quizzes, right? So I'm going to set it up like I don't want to peg them into, I only like these topics, or I only learn in this way, because we know that's not true. Everybody learns in every way. Some people have preferences and all that, but we all benefit from learning in many ways. That said, everybody likes quizzes. So I want to, basically my goal with this quiz is to understand what things they are interested in within my science field, and understand how they like to learn. So again, not like that they are pegged and only learn that way, but again, we typically can recognize I really like doing this, or I don't like doing that. So I'm going to do a kind of little ABCD kind of quiz, and if you're like mostly A's, then blah, blah, if you're mostly B's, something like that. I haven't mapped out the whole thing, but I'm going to go online and figure out how to make a quiz like that. And there are tons of quiz makers online, so I'm not too worried about figuring that part out. I just have to figure out what my like categories are that they end up with at the end. And I want to do something fun, like, you know, I don't know. I'll get back to you when I figure that out. But I'm also, during the time while they are working on their science learning quiz, I'm going to be passing the notes back that they had given me the following day for those who wanted to continue the conversation. Again, I'm going to keep doing that during the bell ringer until they stop writing back. That is going to be like a 10-minute-ish kind of bell ringer. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes then, if even that, but like reviewing expectations for group work and moving around the room. So the next activity that we're going to be doing is going to have my students moving. And this is the first time that they are going to be like doing a lot of moving in the classroom. So I want to review expectations, like we are not running, we're not like crashing into each other, we are staying on task, and this is the consequence if we're not on task. And then I'm going to move into that like detectives, like who is Miss Nicole, that's me, CER type of activity that I have shared in the previous YouTube video, and I will link to that. So they're going to spend about 5 to 10 minutes collecting evidence, figuring out what they can about me, about evaluating claims in their group then they're going to move into their groups and about 5 to 15-ish minutes maybe evaluating some different claims, just like a check mark, yes, I think there's evidence to support this, an X, no, this is clearly not true, I have evidence to support that, and then a question mark, I don't really know, we don't have enough evidence either way. And then I'm going to get the groups together, like come back as a class, a whole class, and talk about reasoning. And so we'll go through the claims and we'll ask students to share what evidence they found, and then we're going to add the reasoning, the claim, evidence, and reasoning. And I didn't mean to just reiterate that activity. I'm sorry. But if you already watched that video, you're like, I know this, right? But I did, whatever. Okay, and then I'm also planning on sending home my first homework assignment this time. And it's going to be one of those like CER comic things. And basically, I'm going to give them a picture, mystery, whatever, and they're going to have to tell me what happened and then like what evidence supports it. The homework is going to be in the same format that we did the group activity in. So they will see that there's a claim where they can write down what happened, like she fell down the stairs, or maybe I'll even give them the claim, to be honest. I think I will. And then evidence that supports or refutes it. So the homework assignment, I'm not like really worried about. I basically want to see what they can do with it. It's more of like a formative assessment than an actual like, I care what their answer is at this point. But that is day 3. And I don't have that longer period on the day 3. So, or for all the groups, there's one group that has the short class. So we're keeping it super simple, and that's day 3. Okay, so because most of you might not have a 3-day week, I figured I would do like day 4 and day 5. Okay, so for day 4, which takes me back to my beginning of my 4-week cycle, the bell ringer is actually going to be our science. I'm going to introduce the official like science starters approach that I use. So I call them science starters. I don't know why. Someone told me that a long time ago, and I like how it was like SS and it was related to science. Like an alliteration, it was related to science. So my goal for this is I'm going to have my students using their devices. So this is the first time they're going to be using their devices in my class. And I want to introduce that, like introducing the phenomenon as a bell ringer. So I'm going to have they're going to have their paper science starter page, which has an area for them to like record the prompt or like record their thing, like what the prompt was, and then an area for them to like answer the questions or record their observations or whatever it is. And it has several of them on a paper so that I only have to collect them once a week or whatever. I don't have to collect like a piece of paper every single class because I don't care. But I do collect them and I do stamp them. So with the science starter, one thing is I set a timer always. I stamp it as they're working on it. I'm going around and I'm just stamping that they have it done or that they are making progress on it. So then when I collect it, I'm looking for both that it's done and the stamps. If they're absent, they would write down absent, but they would still be responsible with like going in and completing it. In the past, I used to have students look at another student's prompt or look in an absent binder that I had. However, now that we all have technology, I'm going to just have in Google Classroom the prompts for each day, and they can go in and they can do it and just not notate that they were absent on their paper. So I am allotting more time to this because this is the first time they're going to be getting their devices out in my class. They've used these devices before, obviously in previous years. However, first time in my class, first time accessing my Google Classroom, all of that. So I'm expecting this to take at least 15 minutes. But the goal is that they're going to go into Google Classroom. There's going to be an image and of like a phenomenon. Like for example, maybe I'll find a picture of a bee, like pollinating a flower with like little pollen on its little legs and up close of the flower. And they are just going to be recording their observations and probably also adding in questions, but I'm going to start with just doing the observations because that alone can be a challenge. Okay, then we are going to do a quick review of like our homework, our CER discussion, what happened to the lady, did she fall down the stairs or did she trip or whatever, and just talk about that. And I always forget to check homework, so I'm going to make sure I write that one down. And then we're going to move right into our anchor experience. So at this point, I am starting to dip into content. Now my anchor experience, my first unit is ecosystems. It's with a curriculum that's being provided. However, the phenomenon itself is okay, but the phenomenon, but they don't present it in an engaging way. So I'm going to allot about 30 minutes for my anchor experience. Our goal is to have it be an experience. It's also goal is to have them generate questions. So I want to also, look at my notes, review my group work procedures before we begin this, and give like a brief introduction to like asking questions. So my thoughts are, there was actually something that I just saw on Instagram, and there was a jellyfish population, like a jellyfish boom in Israel, and the population like exploded. And this fits into my ecology unit related to populations rising and falling and the factors that affect them. So I'm going to do something with that. And I don't, again, have it fully mapped out, and I for sure will, like, I literally just stumbled across this phenomenon, this real world phenomenon, to incorporate into my provided curriculum. But my goal is that students are going to be given like a job, like a task, and that's going to kind of guide the, like for example, they are investigators trying to figure out why, and this is actually relates to the curriculum also, but I'm going to present it in a more engaging way than just being like, hey, this happened, let's figure it out. So they're investigators. They're probably going to get like a letter file that says, you know, you've been asked to solve this problem. There's a jellyfish population boom. Nobody wants to come to my tourist stand. I don't know. I will let you know when I flesh this out. I just stumbled across the phenomenon like this morning or yesterday. I don't know, it all blends together. And the goal then is for them to be posed with the task that the problem, the situation they're going to be solving throughout the unit, to dig into it a little bit. So I always like to use like videos or picture. Sometimes I like to use data, like this was the weather and the temperature or something like that. If it connects, that doesn't really connect to my curriculum, so I probably won't go there right now. But then anyway, whatever questions I need them to generate, I'm going to guide the experience in that way. Then we are going to talk about, so after they're doing their noticing, we've done a lot of noticing up to this point, so they should be able to come up with some observations. Then we're going to talk about, okay, now how do we take those observations and ask questions? And we're going to use we're going to explore some different procedures that might work, like setting a timer and just doing some like free writing questions. We might do set a timer and then everybody just like talks with their group and says questions, and one person just writes them all down. We might do some questions, like I might give prompts like, what questions do you have about like the causes, like, you know, like bringing some of the cross-cutting concepts. What questions could we ask about structures we're observing? What questions could we ask about the cause of things? I don't want to throw out too much lingo like structure and function and cause and effect and systems and system models, but just to like activate different ways of thinking about this phenomenon. So we're going to do spend a little bit of time on teaching how we're asking questions. That's pretty much the 45 minutes for like that day. And then I'm going to be doing the extension activity, and we're going to do I think we're going to do a science article, like a science in the news type of article activity, or we're going to do another nature journaling. I haven't really decided. I don't want to like beat my students over the head with nature journaling. So I think I might mix it up and do like a weird, wacky science current events article kind of thing. And I can incorporate again those like making observations and asking questions. And we can talk about some of the science skills that the scientists use in that study or in that investigation. As a way to start talking about like not the scientific method, but like our science and engineering practices. So I think I'm going to do that for my extension. And that's day 4. Now the last one, day 5, Science Starter is going to be a phenomenon presented on my Google Classroom like before with a cross-cutting concept lens. So I might ask them to like look for patterns in something, or to brainstorm ideas about like the causes and effects, or to focus on the structure. I haven't, again, figured out exactly what the phenomenon and the cross-cutting concept is going to be. I want it to be something that's really accessible, that they don't need like super long introduction to what is the systems and system models, or what is structure and function. I figure if we do something like what is the structure, what is a pattern, like I can see what they know, and then also it's not anything that they need a bunch of instruction because it's the bell ringer and it's just a warm-up. And then we're going to move into like continuing our anchor. So our anchor experience we were focusing on generating questions. Now we need to move into actually like organizing and determining which questions are going to help us, where, like navigating, I guess is the word. So we're going to go through our questions that we generated and begin with sorting them. And we can do this in a number of ways. I haven't, again, decided which. If you have like a digital board, you could do like the Post-it notes on Jamboard and like move them around. You could do real Post-it notes, move them around. We could just have students rewrite questions. That one is a little bit iffier because like some students struggle with writing and then you're just making them rewrite things, and that's not the greatest. But I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to basically start sorting questions and identifying like these are overlapping. These are honestly probably the best bet is going to be students generated their own questions in small groups. Now we're going to create a big classroom set, and this is where I might just do Post-its because I can write the question on each Post-it, and then we'll start moving them around and we'll determine if there are questions that go together. Like in order to answer this one, I need to answer this one, or this one helps me answer this one. Or these two are kind of the same, so we can probably like combine them or like decide how best to ask this question and put that up there. And then once we've kind of sorted the questions and they're kind of lumped together, lumped in groups, we can see connections between them. Then we decide as a class, where do we go first? What question is going to get us closest to our goal that was presented the previous day in the anchor experience? Like you're an ecologist and you have been called to help us figure out why these jellyfish are going crazy because nobody wants to visit my tourism, our town's tourism agency anymore or whatever, and we're really freaked out that we're going to lose a lot of money. I don't know. Real world scenario, real world situation, real world phenomena. I mean, that's kind of the made up, but it could be real. It could be happening. And the real world phenomena, that really happened in Israel right now with the jellyfish. So we can come back to that task and we can determine like what's going to help us solve this problem for them. And that will help us I don't want to say eliminate questions, but identify which questions are more priority and which questions are maybe less priority and which questions are totally not related and might just be, if we have time, we might work on that. And so that is my day 2. I envision that will take a fair amount of time. I am going to have my extension activity, so if it doesn't take as long to do this navigating and creating our plan, then we can move into the extension task. But honestly, I think it's probably going to take a fair amount of time. I also am envisioning and creating some kind of having students create a work plan. So while our storyline will unfold as we move through it, I also want students to kind of we can begin to fill in these pieces of I need to make sure I answer this question. I need to make sure that we answer this question. I need to make sure we answer this question. And so I want to incorporate some of that independence into our storyline where we can begin creating that work plan of these are the first 3 questions we're going to work through, or these are key questions we're going to have to answer during our unit. Maybe it's not the first 3. Maybe we go with 1 and that leads us on a different tangent. And then we eventually come back to question 2 that we identified. But I was thinking that I also want to incorporate that. It's a Montessori approach with the work plan. I'm still figuring out what it's going to look like in storyline learning in middle school. But I'm envisioning there will be some type of students documenting planning out the course of their investigation into this phenomenon, so that it really is more of a student-driven storyline instead of me just saying, okay, this question's coming next. Okay, this question's coming next. This question's coming next. My goal is to have student input in that. And earlier on, it might be a little bit more teacher-driven as we are getting to know each other and they're getting more familiar with all of these skills. But I want to also set the stage that they are having opportunities for input from the get-go, so that eventually it can be by the end of the year, we are having our anchor experience, engaging in our phenomenon, and then moving through this questioning process. And it's just bang, bang, bang. Yes, we're going to do this question. Yes, this question. This is on our work plan. This is for sure needs answered. And we can kind of map out that investigation right from the get-go, almost independently is the goal. So that is my first week of school. It ends up being a little 2 weeks for me, or close to 2 weeks, but because my weird schedule, but those are my first 5 days of school. I hope that helped. I don't know if it did. I just figured I would share what I was doing in case you're curious, how do you start your school week? What do you what do you do at the beginning of the year? I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's nice to be like a fly on the wall. So that is my fly on the wall outline. If you kind of enjoyed hearing what I did and you want to know how these activities go, and also kind of more details, because like I've said, some of these I don't have all of the details fleshed out. Stay tuned to the Teaching Science in 3D podcast. You have to wait about a month, but in September, Erin and I are going to do a recap of my first couple days of school, and I can share with you and like what went well, what didn't go so well, what would I change, and I can share with you then all of that stuff, like what I did and didn't do, and what worked and what didn't, and what I would change and all of that. And you can kind of get the after as well, because this is all like the before, right? Best case scenario stuff, and that's not always how it works, but we're gonna do our best. Okay, if you have any questions, please reach out, and thanks so much for hanging out with me it's been a really long time, but thanks.